Okay, so you saw the game, so that's what we're going to try to accomplish. Must be class or namespace name. So I think we may be in trouble with a Cocos using statement. So let's just start hacking through some of this code. I saw somewhere using namespace Cocos2d-x, Cocos2d. So how that works is, I'm assuming this may or may not fix it, but based on the error message I'm seeing here, class name must follow by colon colon. Yeah, I'm thinking that they've namespaced these classes now so that they don't conflict with classes of the same name, except that's pretty rare to happen. Let's see if that helped us. Doesn't look like it. So maybe it is found. It's deprecated. All right. Well, I'm going to keep going through the help here until I get an example of some source code. So they don't really give you the plumbing to start. Here we go. This might be closer. Node create. Nope. Parent child. Logging. Don't need that. Sprites. Sprites. Sprite. Clone. Here we go. So creating a scene. Director. So I don't use what they call a director, which is how they coordinate changing scenes. Maybe we'll have to introduce that. But scene create. I wonder if they did take off. Let's just try something here. 2D. So if we namespace down, we get to see, okay, so there's a director. And it looks like we've got our scene. And let's see. I'm not too sure what I'm... Let's see here. Scene create. Game control menu. I'm going to undo that so we can fix it later. Let's jump here in our app delegate. Cocos2d-x is missing. I actually should probably download that as well from GitHub. Let's go to their source code because that's another library that we need. External. What if it's in there? Nope. Tools. It seems like they may have built in the audio engine. Holy goodness, we've got a lot to do here. So simple scene, director get instance, scene create. Other node types. Besides node you can add, yeah, great. Getting started, let's see here. So no tile map, particle system, parallax. I'm going to go all the way back to their start of their documentation, and maybe I should look at some examples, some actual examples, and I bet you I can find them right in GitHub. Let's just look at even tests. So they probably have some tests to kick off the game. CPP tests, project Windows 10. Classes, base test. I bet you this is just a reusable base class that they use to do all the just kicking off the project. So this might be a good place to look. Test base. So just a plain header file. Let's see here. So director, shared director, they use director get instance. Yeah, wow, a lot has really changed. Okay, oh my goodness, oh my goodness, oh my goodness. Yeah, this is going to be tough. Let me see. Cocos2d-x. Tools. I just want a skeleton project, and then at least the plumbing is done. And then I'll start moving over the functionality and handling it one-off. That may be the best thing to do. So let's just look at their help. Clone. Download. Start a new game. Setup.py source file to save variable. Build and run a new project for iOS. Let's go with Cocos2d sample games. Yeah, these are old though. Kill bug sounds good. Source. They built this in Lua, so I don't want this one. GAF examples, solution file, so it's looking promising. Android, iOS, classes. Let's have a look here. Maybe I will download that. Moon Warriors. And this might actually work. I just want to check here. So they hopefully aren't using the same. Yeah, so this seems to be up to date. Director get instance instead of CC director, so they've dropped the CC on their code. Okay, so here's what I'm going to do. I am going to, I guess I can't download the zip version of just that folder or this, but I can this. I'm going to download the zip, and we'll actually open up one of these samples and work through one of the samples and then transition into a sample. That might be the easiest way to get started. Libs. I hope I don't need any of those. I will open this up and see if it builds okay. Keep using Visual Studio 2017, sounds good. Data local temp. I don't know why it's looking in a temp location for these. So I will remove and then re-add it. So add existing project. Yeah, why would it be in temp? Oh, you know what? Hold on. File close solution. Let's copy that. And I will temporarily copy it to just a training in the root. Retarget. Yeah. Sure. So it did load up one of the projects. And I may actually just need this to get started. I will reference the Cocos2d-x project, so include directory. I want to copy that, and let's just make sure I'm in the right location. And I will just paste that in here. And And then I can change our references to that Cocos. So we got the Cocos libraries brought in. So it's project dir. I think that should do. And backslash Cocos. So now we see training, GAF examples, Cocos. And here. So let's see if this resolves out. What is that? GAF shader manager. I don't really want that. So I'll get rid of that. Virtual function on finished on frame. What can I turf? I might just exclude these. I don't think they're going to help me. And I don't want that. I don't need GL states. Win32. So hopefully this will just simply run nothing, but great. GAF features scene. So we need a scene class, and that scene's put in the director to load. Let's go and look at our Salvolution. See if we can start bringing a scene by scene across to make this work. So the main scene will be the main scene. We don't want shenanigan in there. I'll take that out later. Shared director. Game Center Manager and Oh, game menu scene. Here we go. So game menu scene. CC scene. Maybe. Let's just have a look at this guy. I want to see how it fetches this scene. So here's how the new Cocos creates a scene. Cocos2d scene create. Add child layer. Okay. I may be able to. I do not want. I do not want. Let's see. Audio include simple audio engine. So it looks like the include location is different. Using app delegate. What's wrong with him? So he's not building successfully. Let's look at his app delegate. Cocos2d application. So I think once I get this going, it shouldn't be too bad. A lot of it is renaming of classes, not so much they've changed. So that should resolve. I'm not too sure why. I disagree. I disagree. I disagree. Let me just 12 into here. CC application Win32. CC application. It just doesn't resolve that. So let's look at our project. Close that. I don't need that anymore. Celvolution libraries Cocos. And that's in Celvolution library platforms. And window. Now, do I need to set CC platform Win32 in the project? So what I should do is if this guy is resolving if he's resolving that, okay, but I am not. Let's look at the properties of that project, because what may be happening is it added some preprocessor stuff. Doesn't look like it. So they added Cocos2d debug 2, Windows debug, maybe one of these. I know by default Win32 is there. Let me just see if there's anything else I may be missing. Okay. Edit. So we're now bringing in lib Cocos. Okay, this might actually do it for me. But let's go. I'll add the preprocessor. So what this is, it's like creating, by adding these, this allows us to do kind of these preprocessor ifs. For example, like here, if win32, then do something. So it's kind of like pre-compilation if statements that you can key off of this. So if we set this to say win32, our program will probably compile differently because there will be these preprocessor ifs that might say include the header, the special Windows source files if win32 is defined in a preprocessor definition. Anyway, this is definitely above what the course is going to get to for a couple of weeks, but anyway. I am going to add these guys. So these are includes, additional directories to include. I don't want the GAF stuff. Yeah, maybe I'm better off just copying. Try copying that and going back here and see if I can include these. I may have to include one at a time. And we've got Cocos2d. Platform win32. So this additional include will probably resolve the error I was getting with in the inheritance to this application class. You can see on my side, well, you can't see it, but I was getting a red squiggly, which means it's not referencing it properly. And I think it was an ambiguity error because I was including all directories, and the win32 specific ones need to be just referenced. Otherwise, it's referencing the win32, the iOS, everything's getting referenced, and there's a collision because you'll have that class defined multiple times for different platforms. So the question lies then, if this project is referencing win32 specific source code files for Cocos2d-x, will it only run on a Windows machine? And the question is, or the answer is really no. But we do have to go through this process of creating a project on different platforms to build it out for that platform. So for example, if I want to build out this game to iOS, I'm going to, the easiest way would be to take all this source code in here, including the win32 stuff, move it onto a Mac and open it up in Xcode. And then Xcode has very similar properties like this does. And instead of including the win32 directories, I just swap it out to include iOS or Mac source code files instead. And that way it would compile for that platform. But you can't directly compile. I guess Visual Studio 2017 has talked about compiling for Android and even iOS. I find iOS a little bit difficult to believe because it compiles differently on a Mac. The binary equivalence of the executable for a Mac or iOS device is a lot different than the binary equivalence of a compiled executable on a Windows machine. So I find it kind of iffy for it to work, to compile on a Windows machine into a binary for, for a tablet, like an iPad, sorry. Okay, so I got this, and I may have to go back and our include directory. Oh, that's okay. Project dir, Coco. So we had that right. We had those right. Cocos2d-x. I don't think we need this one, but I will leave it. Let me try this now. Please, please, please. Correct. Good. So now I fixed the ambiguity problem where I was referencing all folders. So what did I just do here? I simply explicitly said in this location, don't include everything, because I was including everything by not saying explicitly what I wanted to include. Instead, I went in and just said explicitly include the Win32 stuff and negate out the other stuff. So it's not going to have this ambiguity or confusion of which application class am I inheriting from. It knows now I'm inheriting from the one in the Win32 folder, not the one possibly in there, but it could also be in any one of these, because these all seem to have the same deal going. Like if I go to iOS, there's an application class there for iOS. If I hover over it, we'll see the class name is application. You can kind of see right, I can't highlight here in the view pane, but right there. So anyway, so now we are targeting Win32 specifically. So we're getting a little further on, but it's an uphill battle. So app delegate must be a namespace. Let's look at the examples. Okay. Everything works there. Awesome. Awesome. So director. So this is going to be deprecated. F12. Deprecated. So shenanigan, that's a project I created years ago just to do like, yeah. So I'm going to take shenanigan out if there's any reference to it. And simple audio engine end. Let's go ahead and just have a look at some of these sample class files. That Cocos2d-x has provided. So here we got a simple audio engine in here in GAF features. So let's drag in. How did they use the simple audio engine, and what am I doing with my old code? It's a bit of a... So Cocos2d-x still exists. If target platform is iOS, we use Cocos2d-x. Otherwise, we've got a member variable called music effects. So that's probably what I want to find. So let's fix that error. Let's work from the top. So music effects must be defined in the header file of GAF features. So let's drag the header file in. And we've got an unordered map. So we haven't learned about containers. That's something we'll definitely learn about when I continue on with the class. Again, anybody who's around or who's listening in right now, This is not the class. This is just me hacking through making the examples work for this course. So it's me doing just housekeeping day for me today. Anyway, so we haven't learned about containers in the standard library, but vector is an array. If you have a programming background and you've used arrays in the past, vector is now the de facto array in C++. You no longer are supposed to really use arrays. I shouldn't say that, but the arrays kind of come from the C, so C++ graduated from C. Now, if we were programming in C, we would use an array, which is a pointer to a contiguous portion of memory. So what's a contiguous portion of memory? Well, you know, in our first class we did yesterday, we talked about variables getting a block of memory in RAM, right? Like, just think of it as like your RAM is composed of lots of little blocks, and one of those blocks is going to be assigned for our variable, a variable, arbitrary, any variable, doesn't matter. Now, an array in C programming, not C++, is a block, but contiguous block. So a block for, because an array is basically a bunch of variables stuck together in a variable, right? An array contains, let's say it's an array of strings. So block 1 will contain the first string, block 2 will contain the second string, and so on. And those elements, they're called elements in the array, they take up blocks, and they're contiguous blocks in that they're one after another. There's no space between them. There's no other variable defined between them. It's just the array's blocks together. Now, in modern C++, the vector provides exactly the same thing. It's contiguous blocks as well, and this guy stores strings in each one of those blocks or elements, and that's fine. The cool thing about the vector is it'll resize. So, for example, in the problem with the C-style arrays, the original way of doing arrays, is you would define the size of blocks. Like, you would pre-allot how many blocks that array is going to have. Now, that array could grow during the course of your program running. They might grow in size, but you'll eventually be out of bounds of that array once you grow beyond how many blocks you've assigned for that array. The cool thing about vector is it will automatically grow for you. It'll automatically make sure you have more blocks if you add more elements into that array. And it does that automatically for you. You don't really have to worry about that. Yeah. Some people argued about using vectors because you didn't really control the growth. And to be honest, if you have to resize an array, normally there's some moving of stuff in memory to other memory locations involved. And that takes overhead and can slow down a program. So there has been some blowback in the past with vector, but it still is proven in a lot of benchmark tests that kind of moving has been done smarter and it's more performant. So vectors are our go-to array in modern C++. So instead of, if you're used to C-style arrays, any of you, we won't see very many of them. We'll see vectors instead. Yeah, okay. So music effects, unordered map. Here's the music effects. I see. Yeah, this is a bit gross. This is going to be a painful class or whoever's watching me. If you're expecting to get anything from this, you know, it's going to be a lot of me debugging and working through goofy little problems to make old source code work with the new way. Anyway, so our sound is stored in this type. And this type is really an unordered map. A map is, it's not really an array. It's a bunch of key value pairs, the key being the int and the value associated to that integer type is a string. So what this guy is doing, this music effects, is clearly looping through or pushing sound effects onto this type. And mFX is here. Yeah, so maybe let's go back to the source code. So looping through mFX. So where does mFX? It's almost right here. Get instant, unload effect. Yeah, but there's nothing in it on first load. That's fine. Clear music effects completely. So clear that dictionary. That's fine. And yeah, whatever. I'm just going to shrink this in size to maybe 90%. Okay, so animation sequences. I don't care about animation sequences. Audio. Oh my god. These guys really did a lot of crazy stuff to get this plumbed up. Okay, you know what? That's fine. That's fine. So that's fine. Get instance preload effect. So maybe maybe we should drill into, let's just try this. Yeah, so the namespace does exist. Simple audio engine. And end. So all of that mucking around was kind of unnecessary. But we're working through this. By using the namespace, I don't need to prefix Cocos2d-x in front of the call to this class. So simple audio engine end now is resolved. So that's good. Shared OpenGL view. I don't want to tackle that yet. And shenanigan, we're going to get rid of shenanigan. How do I do a multi-line comment in Visual Studio? Comment selection, Control K, then Control C. Okay, so we're going to have Game Center out of the loop for now. And so Control K, Control C. Now, we know director is not CC director anymore. That's been deprecated. So we want Cocos2d director get instance. So is there such thing as a shared director? Brilliant. Now that shouldn't return back a CC director. CC director is simply an alias for that director type, you can tell. But since we're using modern C++, we can just use the auto keyword. We haven't learned about the auto keyword, but what that means is the compiler will auto-resolve the type, right? The data type based on what you're assigning to the variable. So this variable is called pDirector. Shared director returns back, yeah, it does return back a pointer. So we're going to be playing with pointers here. And auto will simply, if you hover over auto in the compiler in Visual Studio, it'll actually show you what auto truly is. You can see here it's the class Cocos2d namespace and the class name is director. But auto just saves you from typing that out. Brilliant. Okay, so pointer director. I'm just going to find out how the sample code here used director. Get instance, get content scale factor. Wonder if we've got that going on. If target is iPad, enable retina display true, and set resource directory to iPad HD. So Yeah, I won't go into that. I'll show you what this means in a second, assuming I still need to do this stuff. So let's just P director, control space to see what the options are. Get. Maybe it's set. Maybe they've used the convention set. Set. And this may be completely irrelevant now. Enable retina display may be something that no longer is necessary in Cocos2d-x. And because of that, I am going to not target any specific platform for now. Okay, so set display stats to true. Yeah, we want to display, that'll display the frame rate on our game, so we can just see an overlay of the frame rate as it fluctuates while we're playing the game. This helps us debug our game to see if we've got some lag that's slowing down our program, and we can see a drop in frame rate. Typically that will occur when there's lots of animating going on, or lots of calculations going on, or both. So we definitely want to optimize our calculations and optimize our animations as well. We want a default is 1/60, so I'm assuming 60 frames per second. And our game menu, and that's great. So hopefully, I'll have to look at this guy, but hopefully now our director will load, and our director is kind of the orchestrator of the game engine. So director opens up, and basically the director is used to switch scenes. So for example, you can see our director variable here. It's calling a method, and this is really a dereference from a pointer. This is a pointer. So instead of using the dot notation like we would normally use, you use the dereferencing notation. And then it dereferences to get the actual object at that pointer location. Then we have that object, and we can call a method on that object, which is run with scene, and we pass it a scene. And this is our game menu scene. So then hopefully once we fix our game menu, we can at least see the very opening game menu show. Now, assuming all of this kind of works. Is it necessary to include OpenGL view right now? Maybe, maybe not. Let's comment that out. We'll find out. So the header looks good. The app delegate looks good. I might do this a smart way. And what I'm saying here is, since all we start with to begin with is our app delegate, I'll definitely leave that in our project. And we need to use our game menu. So I want to keep our game menu in. So let's go ahead and just look at our game menu. It only includes the Cocos2d header. That's great. Let's look at our game menu class file. And it references game layer, game control menu, BTG core, BTG resources, and game center manager. Well, let's do this. So I need app delegate, and I need game menu. And I'm going to remove these, exclude them from project. And I will do the same with all the unnecessary, hopefully unnecessary class files as well. And that way we'll start, I don't know what happened there. That way we can slim down the code in our project and make sure we can get it to compile. And then we slowly add more of the scenes and continue adding more of the game. So we'll exclude these guys. And I think we can exclude all of those. Now the problem occurs in game menu.cpp because it's referencing a lot of my source files. Oh, we want game menu because that's the class we're in. But I'm going to, since we excluded these from the project for now, I'm going to drop those. So we're going to have to look at how we handle scene and node, shared BTG core. So shared BTG, I don't know if I should include that because I think he's got a bunch of configuration stuff. And my pool. Well, we'll figure it out. 132, Sprite. Okay. So we'll come back to BTG core in a second. Let's reference scene. Let's fix all this stuff. And Cocos2d reactor. Just hang tight here. I want to look at how they created their scene. Objects to scene, I get it. Let me just search for scene. So here we go, scene. Cocos2d scene create. GAF features create. GAF features is looks like a Cocos layer. And let me just confirm that. GAF features is a Cocos2d layer. Okay. Okay. So let's go back. And where was I? So scene is just empty scene. So, okay, so scene is not CC scene. We're going to drop, so CC is no longer used in Cocos2d-x clearly. So scene create seems to be, and that makes more sense instead of node. So we've got our scene defined. And game menu is a layer. So things haven't changed that much because GAF features is a layer and our game menu is also a layer. So let's go to game menu and correct it from a CC layer to layer because those seem to be deprecated. I get the feeling that, interesting, hold on a sec. If I do that, it seems like layer node func exists. F12. Explicit type is missing, int assumed. Function definition CC layer is not found. Layer node func. Yeah, that's, so what this is a macro, and this will get replaced by the compiler. Like this preprocessor definition will jump in before compilation, and this will get created in line as whatever it is, but clearly it doesn't exist in Cocos anymore. So we will figure our way around that. And we might as well undo CC action because we know it is CC action. CC scene, CC object. So pretty much anything that is CC is getting removed. And this fails, but I'll look into what is required. Implement the static node method manually. Can't recall what I did. This is what you get when you create a game 5 years ago and you do other things and you come back to it later. And this is my punishment. Okay, so let's go back here. So CCC create, just like this line does. Then we create Our game menu no longer is node valid. Creates, yeah, and it should be a layer instead of game. Well, let's just try auto since we're using auto. Okay, so our layer is a Cocos2d layer class. Brilliant. Cool. And really this should be auto as well. We'll be using auto keyword a lot. Oh, yeah, except for there. So auto, we haven't learned about it in the regular class that's being taught tomorrow, but we'll actually probably learn about auto tomorrow because we're talking variables and data types tomorrow. Auto is it's like compiler sugar. It's syntactical sugar. It isn't a data type. It simply deduces the data type based on what you're assigning it. Right? So when it compiles, this auto gets replaced with, you can see I'm hovering over. Hopefully you can see that small little pop-up that says layer. It's a layer class. So auto gets replaced with what the true type is. But it just allows you to be a little bit, I shouldn't say lazy, but yeah, lazy. You don't have to type in the full thing. And that's good sometimes because sometimes the type names are really long. And we'll get to that later. Anyway. So for the compiler to deduce the type, you have to be assigning something to it on the right-hand side for it to deduce what that type is. And it can't deduce that from null. And it should be null PTR now. From null pointer. It can't deduce what the type is. So we're going to have to explicitly put in the type. Because if null means nothing. So what I'm assigning to this auto is nothing. So how would the compiler know what type nothing would be? Because null pointer can be assigned to anything with a pointer. Any type with a pointer. A scene, a reference to scene. It could be a reference to layer. It could be a reference to BTG shared core. It could be a reference to C. You just don't know. So anyway, auto only works when something's being assigned on the right-hand side other than like a non-value. Like this is really a non-value being assigned. It's a null. Okay. So great. We've created our game menu. It's created in memory. Lovely. Yeah. So we're doing okay. We're doing okay. I don't know how far we'll get. We're definitely not going to have a running game today because I'm not going to sit here and do this all night. But yeah. Okay, so game menu init. So we've got an init method. I think I've added an init method on all of my classes. And so there's some design patterns. If you're kind of a design pattern person, if you're not, totally ignore what I'm talking about because it's kind of high level stuff. Yeah. Anyway, so this is kind of like a template pattern where you've got these virtual methods defined on your classes that are exactly the same. That way you can be really generic in your code because you know all of your classes have a method with the exact same name. So if you give all your classes that, let's say, draw an init method, then whenever you do your drawing, you can use all your classes, you can just call the init method on each one. So game menu would have an init method. Game layer might have an init method. Our about menu will have an init method. And you just use that to draw with. So you can see I'm doing some drawing because we got some sprites in here and we're actually creating some sprites. We're setting where it should be, its origin is, and we're adding it actually to the game. And then actually setting its position. So our init methods in our game are used for our drawing. Cool. Okay. So there's a lot breaking here. But we're cool with that. And I'm going to go up and look at our source code. And I just want to see if BTG core is easy to bring in. It includes iUpdatable, BTG resources. Game Center will be turfed. And let's look. So I think we can maybe bring those in. Maybe we can actually bring these in, because I think I'm going to need these quite a bit. So we're just slowly adding source code back in and fixing bugs. And iUpdatable, I think, was a reference as well. I'll look at iUpdatable. I get the feeling he is lightweight. And he needs BTG resources. And this guy's pretty easy because he is simply has just a bunch of variables, static variables defined by the looks of it. And that's cool. This will be kind of where we define our constants in the game, like the level, the information in the levels, how many bad guys we got to worry about. Okay, so BTG resources found. This simply has some inline methods. Yeah, we'll describe that later. That's more advanced stuff. I brought in BTG resources. Let's see how many issues we have. Looks like we've got a return. If not defined windows. So we are Win32, so we are not defining those. We're going to probably have to. Yeah. I think we're okay. And I was a bad boy here. I used char array, old C style strings. So we're going to be turfing that stuff. If you come from C or even C and C++, where for some reason they don't like using the string class for the string data type, you can actually create char arrays. You can see this is an array that defines it as an array. And so your string is sort of represented by this char array, but it's not good to use that. We'll definitely be replacing that. Okay. I want to see some squigglies, but I'm not. I want to see some squigglies. And why am I seeing that? So Visual Studio has a cool function. You hit the F12 key on top of on pretty much anything. It'll actually take you to the reference, like where the source code is. So I could F12 on object. It takes me to type def ref object deprecate. Yeah, I guess we're going to have to change that. Okay. No error. There's got to be some error here. Let's see if that's defined. CC user default. Where the heck is that? Yeah, this is not. This is not showing me errors. Slowly it's starting to show me the problems. What was CC user default? Did I have... think I'll drop him for now. Let's see. So what was our Denshon? Audio include. Control space should autocomplete. Clearly I am having. There, it finally did it. Oops. Okay, so we've got, hopefully that squiggly will go away once everything kind of updates. Game Center Manager. We're going to get rid of Game Center for now. Coco's Denshon should fix as soon as the squiggly there goes away, so Denshon is good. Shenanigan is an old project I created to do Game Center manipulation, and we'll take that out for now because updating one game in library is enough work. So Coco Shenanigans, so we don't care about getting user specific stuff. Now this is an inline helper statement, so this is going to be referenced elsewhere in code. So I will control, I think it's Control K, Control C, Control Z, advanced, Control K, Control C. Well, I don't want, I want a multi-line comment, so I'll do that manually. Okay, so yeah, so good. So BTG core is alive and kicking. BTG resources, I don't know if it's even update yet with errors, but it probably shouldn't have errors because these are really simple. Yeah, we're gonna have to change these enums. Our game menu, right? And iUpdatable should be okay. App delegate. Set display stats. See scene. Run scene. Sweet. CC director. Anybody familiar with the factory pattern or singleton pattern? Sorry. That's what's going on here. Simple audio engine, pause background music, resume background. So yeah, so this is pretty cool. So this allows you to, whenever you minimize the game, it's entering the background. Therefore, any animations are stopped and you pause the music. So you've seen that in games before where if you minimize a game, you don't hear the background music or sound effects playing, right? Same with this. When it enters the foreground again, so when you maximize it, bring it into focus and start playing again, then it unpauses itself and starts doing the game loop magic, and we resume any sound. So app delegate's looking better. Now this is going to be a little bit of a nightmare. That should all be good. Yeah, here we go. We're seeing the errors now. CC mutable array contains CC sprite frame pointers, and it's a pointer to that array. But yet, CC mutable array seems to not exist. Okay. So how do we use arrays now? Let's just see. Just out of curiosity. I may just make it a vector. I just don't want to change the code too much. Yeah. Like they've got their own weird array object. Why would they do that? Not a fan. Not a fan. So mutable array, clearly it's changeable. So the word, just an FYI, mutable means change. Immutable means unchange. So if you ever see the term immutable, you can define the array and you can probably change it the one time when you actually create it. It's initialized with something, but you couldn't add more to it or you couldn't remove from it. It stays immutable. You could destroy the object. Any object you create, you can destroy in C++. But yeah. So I may explosion frame, add object. The only concern is how Cocos expects your array. M objects. Let's search here for M objects. Get object at index. It's its own gaff stuff. I think we should just turf their array. Let's go ahead and define a vector. I should add a vector here. So to use a vector, oh, we've got it. I'm going to actually include the standard library stuff together. So now we know we've got a vector. BTG core. Okay. So std vector, and so inside the less than greater than, you have to define what this vector will store as a data type. So we know the old one stored cc sprite frame as a pointer to it. And I think since they're dropping cc, sprite frame should work. And we'll keep the name because hopefully our array won't have to change very much. And do I want to define it as new? I probably should. You can create std vector without the new statement. That contains sprite frame, pointers, and we can define the count that we want to initialize, but we won't. We don't need to define the size. Yeah, so without the new, you see we used a new before we assigned this array to this variable. So what the new does, like this is more advanced. If you were following yesterday's course, this is really kind of out of scope of anything we've covered yet. But what new does is it puts this object in memory on what's called the heap. So in C++, in really any executable programs, any programs that run, you've got what's called the stack and you've got what's called the heap. The stack is a finite amount of memory. It's a spot. It's a chunk of memory that's assigned for your program that is large, but it's finite, which means it can only grow to a certain amount. I don't know what that is. I don't have control over that exactly. But if you start putting really large things on the stack, it can eventually run out of memory, and you could get an out of memory error and exception. Your program would crash. Now, I think we should put this on what's called the heap, because that has, I guess, infinite amount of memory. And I use that loosely because infinite in the amount of memory your computer has. But I mean, most computers for gaming are going to have at least, 8 gigs of RAM, which is a lot of memory. Now, what we're putting in this array, in this vector, are sprite frames. So they're actually images. And I know they're quite small, but in a large game, this array of images, they could be really, really large images, right? They could be multiple megabytes per image. And if you have, let's say, 100 of those inside the array, or inside this vector, I should call it, then that's really going to put a stranglehold on the amount of memory in the stack. So by not putting the new there, it's on the stack. The cool thing about putting things on the stack is the memory management is a lot easier. If they go to scope, these guys will get destroyed off the stack. If you put them in the heap, they're just kind of like out there, and you have to remember, if you're done using what you created, you've got to do your own caretaking and delete those objects off of the heap. So because I'm putting new on here, we're going to have to do our own memory management and make sure we delete this stuff. Now, we've got an error. It's saying that there's no suitable constructor that exists to store vector frame to frame. I think it's, just hold on here. The reason is because when you new something, when you put something on the heap, all you get back is a pointer to that something on the heap. So by putting, forget what's here, forget what's highlighted. See that little asterisk I put right beside explosion frame? What that's saying is this whole vector array is a pointer to this vector array. So pointers are a really convoluted subject and something we won't cover for at least another week. But just know that by putting new here, you just get back a pointer to this object in memory. So we work with pointers. Okay. Hopefully our sprites will work okay, even though I'm not using Cocos2d's own array type. And clearly they've got their own array because we saw it here. But anything with underscore array does not look good to me. It looks kind of kludgy, kind of hacky. And to be honest, this game engine is I like it a lot, but there's a lot to it. Maybe not the best one to use for this course, but yeah. Okay, so we've got our explosion frame vector. Nothing's been pushed into it yet. So what we want to do though is we want to actually push, we want to push onto the back. So we don't want to push back because that makes a copy. We just want to back it. I'm just getting my bearings here. Bear with me. So what this does, actually, my mistake. My mistake. At begin. Begin, push. I am wrong. That's what I want to do. Sorry. So we're pushing this object to the back of our explosion frame vector. What does push back mean? Well, it's going to push this object into the array so it's stored. That's great. And back means is it pushes it to the back of that array. And that's a good thing too. The reason is, remember we kind of talked about arrays have contiguous memory. You always assign the first element to an array or a vector. When I say array, I should use the term vector. Whenever you push an element on a vector, it's got to be contiguous. So you're always pushing to the back because there might already be another element ahead of it. So you always push it after the last element. So that's really what push back means. Yeah. There's also an in place back, and that makes a copy of this object. But we're actually not wanting to make a copy. We want to actually put the object on. So CC sprite frame cache, pardon me. So clearly we've defined in the cache some objects. Get frame by name S. So we are getting name. We're looping through. Yeah, sprintf. Yeah. Yeah. Bear with me. Let us look at our resources. I just want to see what's going on. So our resources. So we're looping here 13 times. So clearly I've used a magic number. You should never hard code counts, but I'm doing that. This will all be fixed. This was, anybody joining now, this was code from a 48-hour game competition I did, and it was like, I kind of remember it. It was crazy. It started like Friday at around 6 in the evening, and you finished Sunday around the same time. And the game I started creating, like, so how Ludum Dare works, that was the game competition. How Ludum Dare works is you're given a theme, but you're not given the theme until when the time starts. So you don't know what the theme is. And I think the theme was evolution. And so you had to create a game that had some sort of evolution. And I created the game completely different than what the outcome was. It was like a tile map, kind of like walking around, RPG type of game. And then it just became like, it just was like, you know what, I'm never going to finish. It was too ambitious. So I just decided to create, you know, a little game that was kind of roguelike in the fact that the levels just kept going and they just got significantly harder, and you randomly would blurb out these bad cells, and you were the good cell trying to, you know, eat the bad cells, you know, and that was my take on evolution. Anyway, whatever. Anyway, so I hard-coded counts in there that I just did not have time. So this is an example of a gross way to code. Right. So yeah, so we've got our explosions. And all of these together, you can see there's 13. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Yeah, no, there's 12. We iterate from 1 to 13. So we get explosion 1 all the way up to explosion 12, and we break before we hit 13. And the purpose for that was to basically get the name of the asset, the image, and push it into this sprite cache to load it up in memory and anyway, use it in our game. So we really shouldn't be using this, and instead we should really be string, and it should be like explosion underscore 0, well, not 0, plus, this is a little gross too, but if I is less than 10, then let me just go string s, because it's temporary, is equal to I. So we're casting, so we need to do a static cast to string. Let's try that. And you know what? I'm not going to mess around yet. I just want to get this going before I start goofing around. Anyway, this will loop through and push our sprite in our resources directory into there. Now, I may have to change this as a full path because this looks like it's referencing just the PNG file, but our build, well, yeah, and I'll figure it out. We'll figure it out. Okay, so explosion frames push to the vector. Cool. I'm going to make this full size. Is there not? There. Okay. CC animation, animation with frames. Animation with frames. Create with frame sprites. Yeah, that's probably right. Create with frame sprites. So it's an expecting an array. Yeah, I think they just I'm not going to totally get rid of that line of code, that little snippet. I'm going to actually, and let's look at what's expected. So we can actually pass in our vector of frame sprite. Yeah, perfect. So we can pass in our explosion, frame. Maybe not the best name for our vector class. It should be explosion frames. When you see it plural, you'll know it's an array or a vector. But again, I am going to leave that. So Cocos2d-x, const, I might have to do a const cast. Just to make this work. And we know the type is std. std must be a pointer. No suitable constructor exists to convert from std to std frame. Do I want to make that a const? I think we should be okay. All right, I'm backing this up. Const. As long as we don't change explosion frame. Yeah, so we're pushing. What is the best way to handle this? Const cast is giving me trouble. Const cast. Let me just, I just want to Google some stuff here. Let's try this. Let's undo. I was close, I think. And let's get the reference, which will return the pointer. Now let's see. Constcast can only adjust type qualifiers, cannot change underlying type. What do you want? What do you want? Const Cocos2d vector. I think my problem may be the Cocos2d has its own vector class. Okay, you know what? Let me back this up. Let me back all this up. I think we need to approach this instead of std vector. We're using that namespace Cocos. So I can go capital V vector. So that's Cocos2d's vector. Yeah. Let me just see what it has happening here. It's almost like they've just wrapped a vector class, because the underlying object is a vector. Let me look, just so I get my head into so back contains equals pushback. So they've renamed the methods, the functions as well. So pushback is no longer push underscore back. Erase object, erase, erase. Clear, swap. So, new vector. Okay. And it's now push back. And I'll try the constcast. It is vector, sprite, frame, and I need one more. Let's see how close we're getting here. We'll manage the reference count. Type in constcast must be a pointer reference. Let's just give it the reference to. What am I trying to do? What am I trying to do? Let me try this. C begin. Vector dot C begin. Let's go explosion frame. Dot begin. No. and sprite frame. Con sprite frame. Let's just see if I can initialize it. And explosion frame. End. And no instance constructor matches, so am I going to have to new? Yeah, shit. I don't know if I'm a big fan of this. What do I want to do? So create with sprite frames. Create with sprite frames. Let me look. Let me just see here. So I'll copy that. I just want to see how these guys are doing it. So if I go search this repository, let's just see. Const vector sprite frame reference. So they simply did a const reference. Suppose I could do that. And then float delay and loops. Float delay has to be set. Just look here. Let me just look. So I have to set delay. It looks like it either defaults to 0, but it doesn't. And it defaults to 1, but by commenting out the defaulting, it doesn't necessarily default to that. Init with, okay, so then it goes down here and display per unit and loops our delay. I'm a little lost. Well, you know, it doesn't matter. I mean, it doesn't really matter. Let's see what this guy's doing. This is Lua code. Let's go and search any repository. See how people have done this. Couldn't find any matching with that. However, there's some commits. Let's just have a peek here. Animation, add loops, param. Let's look at that commit. Animation. Oh, this is the actual source code file they use. Cocos creator stuff, not interested. Let's see somebody's little game. These have the exact same comment. To create sprite. He just did an initializer list of them. Try this. Let me try an initializer lists to redefine this. And then let's put our 0, 5. It won't take an initializer list. Oh, let me finish that off. Let me see. That doesn't help me. Wow, that doesn't help. What am I going to do? Well, I might go and do a bit of research and try to get up to speed with this Cocos stuff, and maybe stream. I'm going to go back to the slides tomorrow anyway. I don't really like streaming this kind of stuff. I really want to just do training. So anyway, it's been about 3 hours. I'm getting a bit stuck here, and I think I'll sign out. I might come back a little later, but I'm out of coffee. So anyway, thanks.